On behalf of the Council for Social Development and Navdanya, I welcome all of you, and without spending, or maybe I will say a few words about why we thought we need to do this. We had an earlier conference, joint conference, on the future of agriculture in India in the light of 20 years of the trade liberalization, and looking forward 20 years. We realized then that in the upcoming session on Parliament, there are going to be a number of bills brought forward that will aggravate the crisis that we already face in agriculture in terms of farmers' livelihoods, with the suicides and the negative economy being such a dramatic indicator, and also the food crisis, where every fourth Indian is hungry, every second child is wasted. It's a nutritional and food emergency. And that's why we basically decided to address the bills that are coming up in the context of food sovereignty, livelihood security, and the right to food. It's a very tight schedule, so we will request each speaker to be as tight as possible. But of course, to open, we have as our chair, I will now invite Professor Mujkul Dubey to chair both this brainstorming session and give opening address.
Well, I would like to join Dr. Vandana Shiva in welcoming you to this brainstorming. The items that we are discussing constitute a mixed lot, but there is an underlying unity among them. And the unity is basically of 3-4 types. One is that they all relate to food and agriculture and related area. The second thing is that they are all in some way or the other connected with liberalization and globalization. Our commitment for liberalization and the so-called third generation reforms. And the third, of course, is that the growing pressure on the government to make social goods available as a right, not as a charity or favor from the government. And this pressure has arisen spontaneously from the people because of them being deprived, and they're taking a view that they can take it no longer, and they have the right to it, and they will agitate for it. They will compel the government to provide these things to them as rights. And the secondly is the creative interpretation of law by our courts, where they have brought in a number of entitlements in Chapter 4 of the Constitution to Chapter 3 and fundamental rights, and particularly under Article 21 of the Constitution, there is right to life. We will go into these legislations and their implications for the country, for our long-term development strategy, for our autonomy, our independence, sovereignty, and for the livelihood of the people. But before that, I would like to say a very few words on one aspect, and that aspect is this right-based development that has come to become very prominent in the last few years. We have seen that In many areas under various pressure, the government is enacting legislations in this broad area, and this employment guarantee scheme was one of the very important ones enacted. The other one was right to education. The third one was the unorganized workers, their insurance, and some of them are under consideration. Well, another very important one, of course, for the forest dwellers' right. And some of them are under consideration, and right to food is one of them. Now, a common feature that we find with most of these legislations are that when it comes to provision of public goods, the finances made available for providing are utterly inadequate. And so there is no way in which you can ensure the rights with the magnitude of financial commitment that the government makes for implementing the bill or the act. So this is one very important thing. The other thing is that the coverage is partial, and there is an uphill struggle to make the coverage comprehensive. If you take the food bill, if you take the employment guarantee bill, everywhere you have this problem of inadequate coverage. And you waste 3-4 years battle just to expand the coverage, and still it is inadequate. This is the other part of it. Third part that we see is that, check the right to education. You leave out children in the age group 4 to 6, you leave out children in the age group 15 to 18, then what do you cover in school education? And you have norms for providing quality education, but all these norms are in half a page of a legislation. And everything related to that norm and other norms are left to the discretion of the government. So that when it comes to implementation, really it is not very different from the present situation. And the other thing is that the preparations for their implementation are utterly inadequate. They rush through the legislation in a hurry, partly under public pressure, partly to have one more item on the election platform, so that they can go and say that this act also we have, we have enacted. But there is no preparation for that. There is no capacity built in the government to implement. There is no preliminary, again, right to education, about which I can claim to know something. There was no mapping of the schools, so that you don't even know how many schools have to be built. There was, so all the preliminary steps that need to be taken. One doesn't know how many teachers have to be recruited. One doesn't know how many teachers have to be trained. And nothing of that sort was at all done. And so much so that even the related rules, I think that it is now 2 years since this act was passed, and hardly 3 or 4 states have adopted and promulgated the rules giving effect to this act. So this is the degree of preparedness with which we plunge into such important social reforms, which really means that it is more for show, it is more for electoral purposes than really being meant seriously. And then there are a large number of areas where there should be, services should be provided as the right, and they are still left out. And I think the most conspicuous area is children, this ICDS. ICDS is still a charity, and this charity doled out of the government at its pleasure. And it covers something like 190 million children, 19 crore, and they have no rights. It's a very strange logic that a child who is 6-year-old has the right to education, but a child who is 5-year-old doesn't have the right to education. So they have no rights at all. Then you have the whole question of shelter, the most crucial aspect of health. They are yet to be put on the standing of rights, legal-based rights. So the whole huge area that are left out, and I think that, but today's discussion is going to be mainly on how, from a variety of angle, one is trying to carry out the kind of reform that we are committed to. And the seed bill is a quintessential example of that. I think it is, I am subject to correction. It is perhaps in pursuance of our joining the UPOF, and our joining UPOF itself is in pursuance of our implementing Article 27 of the TRIPS agreement about guaranteeing the monopoly over seats, either by patent or by a sui generis system. And some of these things are of that nature which you have in the bill. And I think land bill is a sui generis case. It is a whole question of right of people to assets and their freedom, their autonomy, their means of minimum, their meeting their basic requirement. And I think that, but all of them are related in some way or the other to food and agriculture, and also related to the ongoing program of globalization and liberalization. So I would just, because you are going to hear on individual bills, so I would not take your time any further and stop with this. So, I think I would request Dr. Haq to say by few words by introduction.
Good morning to all of you, respected Dubey-ji, Chaturvedi-ji, friends, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I think on behalf of the Council for Social Development and Navadanya, once again I welcome you. Basically, I thought I just welcome and then not to speak. I just listen to all of you. But then, now that President has asked me to introduce or say something, some issues, I think I have to do it. I think all of you are familiar with the trends and the present and trends and whatever way you are, whatever issues we are discussing. One thing is that we have a neoliberal policy regime has given some direction, in the overall economy, whether it's agriculture or other things. And at the same time, only during the last few years we find that this is the only government which talks about some kind of rights-based, approach in terms of either food rights or education rights or some such basic things which are crucial for the development of the country and also for the livelihood opportunities of the food security. How do you really see this whole thing? One thing is that we have this policy which sometimes people say dislocate, displace and create insecurity in the minds of the people and the whole system. And at the same time, there is some kind of social safety nets in terms of some of these rights. And very difficult to understand. In fact, the whole thing is confusing according to me. The whole thing looks very confusing, but still, maybe my understanding of the whole thing is, since you want to promote these liberal policies under some pretext or the other, these social safety nets probably are political compulsions for the present government. That is what it looks. Unless you do that, I think you will lose, and there will be more instability in the whole process. This is one. Second things are, I think we have listed a number of topics, but first on the topic of land acquisition, my basic, question is whether really it is necessary for us to stop conversion of fertile agricultural land for non-agricultural purposes, whatever may be the cost. Like say, irrigated land capable of producing 2 to 3 crops in a year. Why those lands have to be acquired at all for, particularly for private purposes? The so-called public purpose, which includes, which are basically not public purpose, but private purpose in many cases, whether it is residential, a kind of complex or mining or any other things that you, or giving land for private industrialization and things like that. This is one, because that endangers our food and livelihood security and for the nation as such, not only for the people who are affected directly, even for the nation. If you take good agricultural land for this kind of purpose, then ultimately your food production will be low, and at the same time you are targeting universal food kind of rights for everybody. Like you want to give food to everybody, universal food distribution and things like that, not just targeted. So how do you afford that? First of all, on the one hand you are trying to curtail your production unless you again raise your productivity through good quality seeds and technological improvement and things like that. And but the point is, people will say in some regions anyway there will be some development in need to acquire land. And second thing is, even if you acquire land, I mean whether the people who are directly affected, you are going to rehabilitate or settle them first before you really acquire land. These two questions I will raise relating to land acquisition. There are several other issues there are speakers of succession idea. But then these are the 2 points I thought these are very crucial and which must be addressed properly. Relating to seed, already we had protection of plant varieties and Farmers' Rights Act. My apprehension is that the new bill, seed bill, is basically an attempt to dilute or destroy that kind of protection that exists for the farmers currently. Farmers now the right to use and exchange their seeds locally or whatever, unless they are registered and they have the patent of these kind of things. So there is a danger. So why should you really go for this kind of seed bill, which attempts basically to curtail the freedom of the farmers and also their basic right to use and exchange their seeds the way they want. Yes, we need some quality control of quality seeds. I am also not against if the seed is even produced by any company, national or international, does not really matter. But monopoly rights and create a lot of other problems. If only Monsanto and Syngenta, they have to have monopoly, and people, the other people, companies, they are not able to do it. Unfortunately, what has happened, our ICR system has not delivered. I mean, it is really unfortunate for all of us. The whole public research system has failed, and they also have become, in a way, agents of the multinational companies. That is the most unfortunate thing. But if they really act properly and they develop proper quality seeds, then there is no reason why, some of these monopoly or oligopoly kind of situations should emerge. So I think we need to take care of this kind of thing, at least with the new bill when we are trying to pass. In the context of right to food, I have much more problems. I will not speak the way I thought I should, but then at least 1 or 2 points I would like to mention, that even the existing kind of food distribution system that we have, which is targeted but is still not delivering things properly, huge corruption, huge kind of diversion of grains from the places and then misappropriated by dealers, bureaucrats, rats, everybody in that process. So how do you really ensure that such a universal right, giving 35 kgs or 50 kgs of grains to each and every poor household will be ensured, administered properly? The kind of governance that we have, institutional frame that we have, in some of the data says that in our 200 backward districts, there is no all-weather good road. And currently, some of the ration shops exist at 10 to 15 kilometers of distance. So in some such situations, do you expect that the poor people, will really access, even if you say that there is some kind of right given to them. So the key question is providing appropriate institutional arrangement, maybe at the community level, at infrastructure for efficient delivery of things, and also production and procurement. My worry is that immediately if you start doing this kind of thing, saying about it, and then currently we are able to procure hardly 50 million tons of grains in the best year, and we are able to store only, have good storage capacity of only 40 million tons or so. And if we need, say, 80 to 90 million tons of grains, where do you store, how do you transport, how do you take them to the poor people? These are the practical limitations of the whole thing. So I think unless you raise these issues and try to solve these first, I think no matter whatever you do in terms of passing a new bill or act, poor will be missing in the whole scheme. Even say for instance, I was discussing only yesterday with some of my colleagues that go to any slums, they don't have a ration card. And they cannot ration card because they don't have any proof, they can't say that they are residing somewhere in a lawful place. So in that case, how do you deliver food to them? Even if you say that they have a right to food. So unless you reform the whole system that we can provide that kind of basic, infrastructure, institutions and framework, I think things will not work in favor of the poor. So with that, I think I just stop, and then anyway, distinguished speakers, I think we'll listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll go straight to the discussion on the legislations. And I will request each of you to confine your remarks to 10 minutes, with the exception of Professor K.V. Saxena, who will have 15 minutes, because he's the first speaker.
Thank you very much. Land has become the burning issue of politics and governance as never before since independence. And this is entirely due to widespread discontent that the people are expressing and the violence they have faced by the state in forcing the land acquisition. Now, the discontent is not entirely due to the flawed laws. It is actually due to the unending huge demand of land, which is rooted in political economy, which is creating a kind of parallel speculative economy on land. And unless this policy is reversed or curbed drastically, the discontent will not go away, it will only increase. Second issue is that you have this, even if you reform laws, there are serious issues why the demand for land has to be curbed. First of all, the food security issue which Professor Duge and Professor Haq has raised. Then the scale of displacement that is taking place, it will be virtually impossible for any state to rehabilitate. Already we have a 75% backlog of earlier displacement, and the scale of displacement that is taking place has surpassed all previous records and is going to go on further. So this scale of displacement cannot be met by any satisfactory rehabilitation policy. The result would be that those who are displaced will join the destitute labor market. Third issue is that displacement in the case of tribals is entirely related to their identity, their ethnic existence, their survival. And therefore, if tribal land is not prevented from acquisition, then they face a very bleak future. And fourthly, of course, is that this existing policies are creating land concentration on such a large scale that even the zamindari system fails into significance, because while in the rural areas you have ceiling laws, in the urban areas there is absolutely no ceiling. Now, the latest triggering factor has been initiated by the Supreme Court judgment in the KCC Noida land acquisition case. They have found that public interest was misused. They have also found that this urgency clause was misused. They have also found that land was acquired by using force, and there have been procedural violations. Now, there is a flawed impression that the entire education of farmers is due to lack of adequate compensation. This is not true. Because while in those urban areas and nearby urban areas, farmers may be far more interested in compensation. But in the larger rural areas, people just don't want to give up their land. It is a source of their livelihood. And in the case of tribal, it has very spiritual significance. So therefore, we should keep these two issues in mind while drawing the boundaries of the Land Acquisition Act. Now, government response has taken three sequences. Number one, for the first time, government brought out Land Acquisition Amendment Bill 2007, and it went to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Based on the recommendations of the Parliamentary Committee, Land Acquisition Amendment Bill 2009 was enacted, partially passed but not fully passed, so therefore it lapsed. Now government is going to bring out the third Land Acquisition Amendment Bill. In between, what has happened is that the National Advisory Council has submitted its recommendations, which are quite at variance, with the two versions that the government had enacted. And if we go by the latest statement of Shri Jairam Ramesh, who is the Rural Development Minister, the government is likely to accept most of the recommendations of the National Advisory Council. So therefore, the shape of the new bill we really do not know, because it is not been placed on the website yet. But I'll give you some idea of what these recommendations are. During this period, 3 state governments have brought out land acquisition policies of their own, prominently Haryana, UP, and Gujarat. Haryana and UP are very distinguished by 2 or 3 features. Number one, they not merely provide for compensation, they also give annuity per year, and annuity is subject to revision. Then they also provide minimum agricultural wages to those who lose livelihood, depending upon the category. Then they also provide part of the developed land, both for residential and commercial purposes, and they also provide developed house sites. These are the 3 features. There are minor variations in few, but all of them, broadly share this feature. Now, the issues in relation to the Land Acquisition Act are follows. Number one is the issue of eminent domain. That is, at present, government has absolute power to acquire land. While it gives you a notice, to express your reservations or opinions or objections, but it almost 99.9% overrules them. So therefore, it is compulsory acquisition by force. Now, the demand from all over the country is that this must go, because this is a colonial angle. Land must be acquired with the consent of the people, whether this consent should be of 60% or 70% or 80%, but the element of consent must be built into the law so that it becomes a just, humane and democratic process. National Advisory Council has recommended that at least where land is not required, for defense or security purposes or, social development infrastructure, then 70% of the Gram Sabhas and 70% of the people in the Gram Sabha must consent to acquisition. If they do not consent to it, then it must not be acquired. Now, second issue is whether there should be 2 laws, land acquisition and rehabilitation, or there should be single law. So far, the government has taken a view that there should be a separate law for land acquisition and separate law for rehabilitation. National Advisory Council has said that it should be a combined law. And then there is also demand that existing laws must not be implemented, new laws must be enacted. In fact, this was the recommendation of Parliamentary Standing Committee also, but to the best of our knowledge, there is no indication from the government that they are going to scrap this law altogether. But probably the Rural Development Minister is likely to accept the demand that there should be a common law for rehabilitation and land acquisition, but there should also be a separate law for rehabilitation. Now, where the distinction of the dividing line would be, we really do not know. The third issue is mode of acquisition. At present, all acquisitions take place by the government, whether for companies or for government or for government agencies. But in the 2007 amendment bill, for the first time it was said that the company, if the companies acquire 70% of their requirement directly through the market, then 30% of the requirement would be met by government through compulsory acquisition. National and 2009 law also retained this provision. National Advisory Council has said that all land must be acquired by company because if all land must be acquired by government, because if companies are allowed to acquire land, the poor will suffer, the sharecroppers will suffer, the tenants will suffer. So therefore, their interest will not be protected. It's far better to have a humane, just and fair law rather than allowing companies to do it directly. This is the issue that has to be settled. Now, fourth issue is who are the project affected persons. Existing law of land acquisition only recognize land losers as the project affected person because compensation is only admissible to them. And 2007 law and 2009 law broadly also retained this provision, although they said that tenants who are already recognized by the state government would also be recognized as project affected person for the purposes of acquisition. NAC draft says, NAC recommendation says that all persons, whether they lose land or livelihood or whether they use common property resources, they must all be recognized as project affected person and they must all be entitled to compensation. The gradation of compensation can be decided, but principle must be accepted. Now, whether what should be the mode of compensation payment. Now, at present, mode of compensation has been by and large land in 99% of the cases. But and 2007 law and 2009 law have also only recognized this mode of compensation. NSA recommendation says that for tribals and for Dalits, the mode of compensation must also be land. This is an issue, and in the case of tribals, it's very important because if tribals lose land, they lose everything. The sixth issue is that urgency. There is a provision that land can be acquired for urgency if it is required, can be acquired for urgency, and normal procedures of acquisition would be waived for this purpose. The only concession with the 2007 law and 2009 draft law provides is that the persons affected would get 75% of their this compensation in advance, and they would also get some additional percentage of compensation. The NAC draft now says that is urgency clause must be severely curbed, and it must only apply. It must only apply for security purposes and where safety of the persons are involved. Today you find the case of Noida, the urgency clause has been thoroughly misused because this acquisition for builders has been resorted to by applying the urgency clause. That is what the Supreme Court has found. Seventh major issue is where we have seen traditionally that land has been acquired in excess of the requirement, and therefore this land lies misused, unused, encroached upon, and so on and so forth. 2000 law for the first time said that the agencies to whom the land has been transferred cannot transfer this land further for any other purposes other than for which it was acquired without the permission of the government. And secondly, if they do not utilize the land for 5 years, then the land would revert to the government. There has been a long demand from civil society activists and various other experts that the unused land must be returned to the farmer. NAC draft recommendation also says that unused land must be returned to the farmer, and this is a very crucial element which must be accepted. Now, as regards entitlements, only entitlement that the 2007-2009 draft regards is compensation, plus transition allowance, plus some portion this outside, as well as some supportive allowance for some time, like 500 days of minimum wages and so on and so forth. Now, the NAC recommendation says that first of all entitlements must be given to all project affected persons irrespective of the size of acquisition. Whether the land acquired is 50 acres or 5,000 acres, the entitlement must be the same. Number one, there should be, apart from compensation, there should be employment to one person per affected family by the project. And if this employment is not provided, then the person concerned would get 5 lakhs as in lieu thereof. Then there should be a house site and homestead land, irrespective of the status. Then all amenities must be mandatory, and then and each individual affected person would enter into a contract with the government, and the government would specify what are his entitlements, so that in case these entitlements are not complied with, the person concerned can challenge. With regard to compensation, the 2007 and 2009 drafts retained the provision of market value. The only addition that was made was that in addition to the market value, the intended use of land would also be given as compensation, which means that when the land is acquired as an agricultural land, but it is known that it will be used for industrial or commercial purposes. So therefore, the appreciation in the value of that land, that appreciation part would also be given as compensation. Some portion of it would also be given as compensation. Now, NSE draft says that the compensation should be increased 3 times the market value. If supposing in the normal market value is 1,000 per acre, then the entitled category should get 3,000 per acre. At present, you know, in addition to market value of the compensation, the affected person also gets solatium, and this solatium is 30%. In the 2007 and 2009 draft, this solatium has been increased to 60%. NSE draft says it should be increased to 100%, which means an average affected person, according to the NSE draft, would get 6 times more the compensation than what he is getting at present. So these are some of the burning issues, and I think on this the concerned person have to make up their mind. But I again repeat while concluding that unless the demand for land is checked, and unless the vulnerable categories, you know, their identity, their interests and their livelihoods are protected, the discontent will continue to go away, and therefore it will affect both governance as well as development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena. Now, we move to the other act, and that is the Right to Food Act. And we have 3 speakers here, and they would each speak for 10 minutes. So I first request Dr. Meera Srivastava to speak.
For the Right to Food Act, Mandita, did you want to start? Okay.
My words
Okay.
will be fine.
Okay. So, see, when we say right to food, if the food is going to be meaning only cereals, I'm just pointing some of the more important bits in this. So from the point of nutrition, there is gross inadequacy. And if one sees in what this act is about, it is a much diluted version of what people of our country need. So if one says that if everyone is healthy but poor, then you have a certain amount of level of provision of food. But when it is known that 46% of your children are malnourished and the level of anemia, to call it food security. So one is basically a problem with that, because as many of us who are associated with Right to Food and also been involved with the health movement, that the issue of pulses and oils and some of the other essentials for nutrition requirements, that has been totally overlooked. So the nutrition security bit is not part of the food security. This is the point I would like to make. And when you're pregnant and when you're breastfeeding a child, the requirement for the mother becomes more. If someone is working much harder physically, then the requirement is more. If people are poor and they've been displaced and they do not have, as was mentioned earlier, any of the cards, from the ration card, whether you get UID or whatever, this would the entitlements of the minimal. So this, when you're talking about the food security, it is a very, very minimal food, what you're calling it, entitlement that is being talked about. In the act, the areas of major problem are that center have the power, and it will have the power for, basically what should be the criteria, who should be the poor. There is a BPL survey going on, and who should be counted as poor? Is it the very destitutes who will be poor? Or, this is a little aside, because people who may be just near or around the poverty line, one round of hospitalization in hospital is known, 40% of the people hospitalized, the question of indebtedness and poverty episodes, which are also increasing with 1% of the budget for health. So when 80% of medical care and healthcare is out of pocket, this may be seen as an aside. But the question is that below poverty line, how it is decided, again, is extremely problematic. But basically, they say that the center will have the right to do this, and also about the scheme. But the expenditure and payment will come from the states. And this is when already many of the states say they do not have enough. The poverty estimate of the center, they say that 6.52 crores, while state's estimate is much more, it's double. So whose estimate is going to be counted? In some places like if you remember, it was said that 18 rupees for urban areas and 13 rupees for rural areas was, according to the planning commission, supposed to be poor. And if anyone has gone to the market and bought anything, knows that absolutely, there had been a demonstration, right to food, to show with 18 rupees and 13 rupees what you can get. So the question, one of the things is that here about the food security bill is talking about providing food, but the market is going to remain unregulated. So if the food prices increase more and more, and which are bound to happen, because there's a global food crisis taking place, and also with the climate change, and of course the speculation and trade, there are many other things that are going on, control on seeds, land for food being, food production basically being used for other things. So the caps how much will be given to the person below poverty line and how much will be given to people above poverty line. This above poverty line, they said it will be 3 kilos per person per month. And how much can you really manage with that? And the price fixation, they say it's going to be 50% of the minimum support price. And so if it's going to be minimum support price and the price fixation, now I'm talking about what they're saying for the above poverty line. So minimum support price, even if it goes higher and higher on one hand to help out the farmers. So here the direct conflict is being created between the farmers who would like to get adequate, support price on one hand, and the consumers who would like the the cost of the food be much less. So the conflict between the farmer and the consumer is being created by this bit of formulation. The other concern about this is that of course, is going to be linked basically with the UID, and as I'm leaving some of the things for Annie and Monindra to do that, since it is basically about targeted distribution, and whenever there is a issue of trying to find who the targeted people are, the expenditure and the whole exercise that goes in, identification and finding the targets, the labor and the expenditure and then the monitoring is much more than had it been universal. Because then those who would not want to use it, it's okay if they don't use it. And so, like in Brazil and there are other countries where this universalization is there. So it's not that it is something that will be happening only in India. Keeping in mind that you have an extremely malnourished population, and the crisis is only getting worse. And the food that is being provided is, if you say that about the cost, the wheat, rice, and millet, is basically the polished rice, which again with the process there's a denutrification of that. There was this question of should it be the atta or should it be the grain? Because as part of the right to food, many of us felt that it should basically be the grain, because then if it is going to be the rotting grain that is made into the atta, nobody will even know. And so this thing about Dalits, tribals, and socially vulnerable, that only if there's a universal principle that is applied, then many of these communities would stand to benefit. So the one can look at the whole thing from the point of view of economics, how much is going to be spent, and the amount that will be spent in feeding a nation, which is basically an investment in your people, like investment in infrastructure, and whereas those things are considered very great. But investing in people being seen as a liability, again it's a perspective which, again from the public health and from the nutrition health point of view, is extremely misplaced. In this, the nutrition requirement of the cereal, pulses, and the oils that were drawn up by Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, that what